As the year comes to a close at CAMS, there is one last big event to take note of, and that is Open House, where we have students showcasing their IDP projects for the year. What is IDP? IDP is also known as Interdisciplinary Project, which doesn't matter, but basically it is the final project of our year that culminates our entire year here at CAMS, at least in my experience as a current sophomore and just looking back at my freshman and sophomore years. So every year we get a different IDP topic per grade. So how that works is we have different themes and a basically different task. And the thing about IDP is it is not a solo project. You are part of a group, and the group size varies from time to time, but it's usually consistent per grade at least. So we'll get into that later. So Open House is a place where we showcase all of our IDP projects, and they're basically all around CAMS in different classrooms. I know in my past years it's been outside, but I heard that they're probably going to go inside just because of like the wind and everything. Overall, IDP is a great way to see what we do here at CAMS, the first-hand experience on the work we produce and how hard we work for it. So if you are interested in CAMS, I definitely recommend, showing up and checking it out. As when I was an 8th grader, when I came to Open House, I'd say it's very eye-opening, and it was very interesting to see all these different projects, come together and be presented. So I had a lot of fun as an 8th grader looking back, and to be honest, as a freshman and a current sophomore, it's also been a lot of fun experience to be working in a group and, practicing this team collaborative skills and all that comes with it. So let's get into it. First of all, in my freshman year, we had an IDP based on the zombie apocalypse theme, which is going to be the same for this year as well. So basically how it works in the zombie apocalypse IDP is that you are split into various sub-teams, and you're all part of one big group for your specific computer science period, which there's multiple. So in my computer science period, we were split into multiple sub-teams that had to do different tasks. So I'll just list the sub-teams right now. We had robotics programming, robotics engineering, disease control, I believe it was called, statistical analysis, and statistical analysis, the fashion side of things, as well as the media team. So first of all, let's start with my group, which was the programming robotics side, and I'll also talk about robotics engineering as well, because robotics was a pretty big highlight of this IDP for me, at least, specifically because we used VEX parts to build the robots to complete a specific task, which I'll get into later. And it was really cool because I'm part of VEX right now, VEX Robotics, and I'm a builder, and it was really cool to see us use VEX Robotics parts for this project. And basically the task was to build the robots and to code a robot that will be able to navigate through obstacles to reach a specific vial, which we say has, the cure to the zombie infections, right? So we've been working on this for, I believe, a quarter or more. I can't really remember, to be honest, but you work on IDP for quite a long time, and you just work towards that for basically until Open House, which is going to be this Thursday and the 28th. So moving on to the next groups, right? We have the disease control one, which is mainly based around medical biology, one of the 2 science classes you can take coming at the CAMS, which I believe medical biology is what most people take, because you have to take biology to take APES, for example. And so the main thing about this one was you investigate the zombie disease and come up with countermeasures as well. Moving on, we also have the fashion part, which was honestly, it was really fun for me to watch it during IDP. Also Open House. Because how do I say it? During Open House, they have this event at the quad where they showcase the fashion design and stuff, and it was pretty cool to see my classmates and stuff come up with these ideas. And it isn't really just fashion. The main goal of this fashion project is to create a feasible and protective clothing against the zombie apocalypse. So it was really cool to see all the showcases and stuff like that. I think my group specifically had a really cool design, and I just really enjoyed looking at that. Another one is going to be the statistical analysis team, which, as it sounds, is based on math. And basically, what they did was they did like math problems relating to the zombie apocalypse topic. And finally, we had like the media team. I believe they had more of the role of being like the head. I guess you can call them like managers of the entire project. They'd always like check in with like the team leads and stuff and talk with them, see their progress, and they would kind of turn that into like a video for like to see. They made like weekly videos on the progress of the on how like the zombie cure is being developed, how's the robotics team doing, how's the math team doing, stuff like that. They would do that basically weekly. Another interesting thing was, I believe during open house they presented a commercial, which was pretty cool. My team had pretty good editing skills actually, so it was really cool to see. And yeah, overall, yeah, their main goal is like to manage and stuff like that. Also keep in mind, things are subject to change. I'm speaking on my experience as a sophomore currently, so they could have changed the IDP a little bit, but as far as I'm aware, they're still doing the zombie apocalypse ideas, and most of these, what I'm saying is going to be similar. Okay, so during the presentations that you're going to see around campus, I know personally for me in Ms. Johnson's classroom, which is our computer science teacher, this is where we were taught, where we would do our presentations for my group about like demonstrating the robots. So if you want to go check that out, it's going to be in the 6000s building. Of course, that's subject to change. Hopefully I will post a schedule somewhere on screen so you can see the different rooms. And, if you're interested, go check it out. In terms of groups, the groups were decided based on a Google form. And the Google form basically just talked about your skill sets, right? How comfortable are you with like robotics? Do you have like a high passion in fashion? Like, knowing these groups, to be honest, if you know the groups beforehand, then it's like kind of obvious to see like, if you want to like choose your group. But, based on these questions, they would, sort you in a different group. As well, I believe there's a question at the bottom if you wanted to be like a team leader or something like that. Moving on to the sophomore IDP, which is biotech based. If you don't know what biotech is, it's one of the 3 pathways we have here at CAMS, computer science, engineering, and biotech. And all students take an introduction to biotechnology here at CAMS in their sophomore year. So, which is why this IDP, I'd call it more biotech focused, but it's not limited to that, and we'll get to that later. So the sophomore IDP doesn't really have an overall theme per se. Basically, we choose our topic at the start and we spend like a week brainstorming what it's going to be about. But the biotech really comes in here because you have to have a biotech solution for the problem that you chose. And of course, it has to get approved, and your team has to talk about it and make sure this is something that you all care about, at least, because I found it personally very good to have a topic that you care about. It encourages a lot of your team members to, try more on the assignments, and at least it's not boring for some people. So honestly, I really like the sophomore IDP for the fact that we get to actually choose our topic and gives us a lot more freedom with group projects compared to, like a pre-planned idea. So the sophomore IDP is split into multiple subcategories. While it is mainly focused on biotech and your biotech solution, there's other things that basically culminates your sophomore year here at CAMS. So we also have chemistry, which we also takes at CAMS, and the chemistry part basically gives you, a deeper chemical, an in-depth chemical ideas into your biotech solution, as well as we have the math section, right, where you talk about, you make predictive models on how this problem will evolve over time. For example, if without or with your solution will, how would the world be like in the future? Next, we have the English part, which, as far as I'm aware, is mainly based on like using proper sources, proper citations, as well as we also make a commercial for our, for your product and your solution. Next, we have the history, which is basically as it sounds, how has the technology, your solution that you're using developed over time? How has it evolved over time? So for the sophomore IDP, if you notice that we have 5 different categories, and this is actually pretty convenient because we have usually in teams about 5 people, at least for my year. Of course, it probably varies within class size, but for me, it was 5 people from my biotechnology period. And it was really interesting because what you really could do is basically assign each subject to a specific person. And that's one way you could do it. My team right now, we're all working on it together. So we all have like a deeper understanding of the topic. And of course, collaboration is really good. But I've seen both ways happen. I believe the delegating each part to one person is more common, but both methods are fine. And it's really interesting to see how teams, work with that, with this amount of freedom that the biotechnology IDP really gives. An important question that I have gotten about, the IDP is basically how much time do you really get to work on it, right? Is this mainly an after school thing? Do you work on it at home? Do you work on it in class? How does that work? So basically, for example, the freshman IDP, Ms. Johnson does a really great job of giving kids time to do the IDP. Not only do you work on it basically every time you have her class, you also get a lot of time. I believe she delegates time after school to really help mainly the robotics kids, but basically anyone can come in and work and on their IDP. So that's been really helpful for me. I remember I used to go to like every single after school one to just get this thing done because it is a lot. And for example, it isn't always feasible to take a robot home and test it, for example. So it's really, I gotta really thank Ms. Johnson for always being very available and helpful to the students as well. In terms of the sophomore IDP, you get a decent amount of time, I say, in class, but there are days where we still have labs and all that stuff. So it's a lot less of a time compared to freshmen, and you're actually expected to work a lot more from home. So I would recommend if you, anyone doing IDP, specifically for sophomore, but in general, I guess, is to make sure you have, a strong communication with others so you can all collaborate online, for example, to work on the project. In sophomore year, everyone has APs. So it's really interesting because IDP actually coincides with the AP test. So as we were working, as assignments were due for IDP, we were actually still studying or taking our AP tests. So it's really important to have that balance between IDP, classwork, as well as AP tests as well. So what can you really expect from looking at the biotechnology IDP at open house? So we're going to be in different various classrooms. Fun fact, last year it was outside, but I believe it's going to be inside in favor of just not having projects messed up by the wind. So you can look at various different IDPs for the sophomore IDPs, and these are going to be the more unique ones specifically because everyone pretty much has different topics. So you're going to see the most variety. You're going to see a lot more different ways people tackle the problem, and that's going to be the biggest highlights of the biotech IDP for sure. Okay, so you've heard from me about the freshman and sophomore IDP, but what about the junior and senior IDPs? Personally, I know nothing about it because I'm a sophomore. So although I'm really looking forward to it next year, it is important, even though I'm looking forward to it next year, I am not an expert to say anything about it and can't really give my personal experience. So why don't we bring along a guest that can really show us how really the junior and senior IDPs were. Hello everyone, welcome back to the podcast. Unfortunately, I don't know too much about the senior and junior IDPs, so I brought my lovely sister here along to tell us more about it. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. So, hi, my name is Emily, and I'm currently a senior here at CAMS.
So let's start with the junior IDP, right? So what was your task? What did you have to do?
Okay, so the mission of the junior IDP was to establish a colony on Mars, and each group was assigned unique mission parameters. For instance, my group's parameters were to reside at the poles of Mars, to have a large colony size, short mission duration. Our disciplinary focus was biotechnology, and finally, our geopolitical affiliation was Russia.
Okay, so let's more focus on the team aspect of IDP, right? How were teams formed, and how did you guys split into those teams?
Right. So teams were formed using a survey that we filled out prior to IDP. It was a simple survey. You just fill out your name and what pathway you in, because each of the junior groups would consist of 14 to 15 people that was comprised of people from all pathways here at CAMS, which are engineering, biotechnology, and computer science.
So which one did you do specifically, and what did you have to do?
I was in the engineering pathway, and so that's what I ended up working on within the project, because even though it was focused on biotechnology, there were still components of the project that required the engineering discipline. However, even if you are in, for instance, the engineering pathway, there are other tasks in the project. For instance, part of the project is to set up like a classroom to design. I think you have like access to half of a classroom to design and present your project deliverables. So even though you're in a certain pathway, that doesn't mean that you have to do work as it pertains to that pathway. Right. So I was part of the engineering subteam. And so what we had to do was create feasible structures and like technology ideas to support the colony on Mars and help achieve our mission requirements. And so what that means is, for example, because part of our mission was to cultivate agriculture, that's really the whole thing, we needed buildings to be able to support the plants inside, even though they are genetically engineered. And so we looked at different kinds of materials, and specifically we looked at like what the Mars soil is made of to create structures on Mars to house those plants. And also we looked at structure, I guess, types, like models of structures to see which one would do best under Mars pressure. And so things like that, engineering, we did engineering things that would support our overall mission. So although our overarching mission was to establish a colony on Mars, ours had to be biotech themed, like our specific mission had to be biotech themed. And so my team's mission was to employ genetic engineering and a controlled environment to cultivate agriculture at the poles of Mars. And so that is the specific mission that we created based on our mission parameters.
So overall, how was your experience working in a team like this?
Yeah, so we are, as I mentioned before, a pretty big group. It's probably the biggest IDP group that you will have at CAMS. It's around 14 to 15 people. And so I think communication was really important. And I think that's something we did do well in 11th grade. We also divide ourselves into sub-teams. For example, like a biotechnology sub-team, and engineering sub-team, computer science sub-team, and also like another design team for the classroom that we're supposed to decorate as part of our project.
And how much time did like the school give you, your teachers, to be able to work on this IDP?
If I remember correctly, we did have class time to work on it. I can't remember if it was like every Friday or so, but we did get some time to work on it in class, and especially towards, I guess, the last week before IDP.
So how much did you have to like work on it at like home?
I would say a few hours here and there at home. Really, I think the amount you work at home, if any, depends on how much progress you can make in class. And yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. So let's move on to the senior, IDP capstone.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you tell us more about that?
Right, so there's capstones for every pathway. There's an engineering pathway capstone, which is EDD, Engineering Design and Development. There's SDD, Software Design and Development, and there's also the Biotechnology capstone. I can personally only speak to the engineering capstone, EDD, and so that's, I guess, what I can talk about. And so each year, Mr. Carpenter, who's the engineering design and development teacher, assigns a big project that you work on throughout the entire year. And so this year, ours was to develop a bipedal ornithopter. Basically, at least for us, it was going to be a raven that is capable of both walking and flying by flapping its wings.
So what was your role specifically on this team?
I am the media director for my class. And so what I do is basically record their progress throughout the year, get some interviews, also create like Instagram posts and slideshow presentations that where we showcase our product. And also the Instagram posts are for like um, indicating that we have fundraisers because the project is funded by the class. So we need to, we are responsible for getting the money to make or get the parts we need.
So let's talk about more about like the groups, for example. How are these groups decided? You know, how big are they? You know, stuff like that.
Right. So in your capstone, that's at least for engineering, that's probably like the largest group you have. It's your whole class. So I am in engineering design development period 2, and so that is our group. And there's several sub teams that can be probably classified into like technical departments and like business departments. The technical departments are comprised of mechanical, manufacturing, electrical, programming, and systems. And then the business departments are like finance, media, and publications.
Did you mention that this was a class? I don't remember.
This is a class indeed. And it is a class, and the project that you are assigned by Mr. Carpenter is one that you work on the entire school year. And so it's nice that you have like a lot of class time to work on it.
That's good to hear. So I heard you mention earlier that you handle, like, you help promote like the fundraising side of things, for example. Can you give me examples of like what it takes to perform this job, as well as the fact that since this is a class, how much money do you really need to complete your project?
That's an excellent question. Beginning with the first part, which is about like what do you need to perform this job? Really, just I guess in interest and enjoyment in designing like graphics and things, because you do that a lot because there's a lot of fundraisers. And then when you do the presentations, you're responsible for making the presentation slides. And so these presentations are given to industry professionals and former CAMS alumni. And so you really want to make sure that the presentation slides that you create is able to showcase your product or your like concepts in the best way possible. So yeah, graphic design skills is, I guess, needed for this job, but also, you know, enjoyment of it overall. And for the second part, which is how much money is needed to like sort of fund this project, I do not have the numbers on me, but I recall that it was in the thousands, I would say, or at least that's the amount that we have raised. Yeah.
So throughout my time here at CAMS, I've heard a lot about this EDD or SDD internships. Can you tell me more about that?
Sure. So these EDD and SCD internships are how underclassmen can sort of get an exposure to like bigger projects, and more broadly, I guess, in like the engineering and comp sci fields while they're underclassmen instead of having to wait to for the capstone in their senior year. I've heard that it's a nice way to get exposure to the kind of projects or the kind of level projects that you will be doing in your senior year. And it's just a helpful experience overall. Another thing I want to mention is that the EDD and SED interns play a big part in like the seniors capstone project. For instance, this year, our EDD interns are responsible for constructing the nest parts that will be used as part of our project. They need to create the nest components and pieces that the ornithopter will have to assemble. And so that's a big part of our project. And it's going to help us showcase our robot's capabilities and really put it to the test.
I would also like to add that SDD interns, on the other hand, I believe they handle like the art side of things, because SDD, we'll get into later, but it involves, I believe, making like a game or some sort of like software for like people to play on, basically. So I know that they're looking for like play testers for interns, or like people to handle like the art or storyboard side of things. So that's like another side of capstone internships, for example. So overall, how has your experience been working in a team for your senior capstone class?
I would say that my experience has been nice, even though it is a big team. As I mentioned before, there are sub teams, and so in my sub team, it's me and one other person. So it's kind of nice to work in like a small group, but contribute to a project that of a much larger group. And so that has been my experience so far. I think working in small groups, and yeah.
So as you have heard, Emily's only part of EDD, and while we've had said what we can about SDD and advanced biotech, you can learn more about it and by going to open house, which is going to be this Thursday on the 28th. So if you want to learn more about it, please come. It's really a great experience, as I've been there multiple times, even before I came to CAMS. And it's probably the best way you'll be able to see, what CAMS is like. You actually see the work that people produce in CAMS compared to like your average walking around the campus, for example. So it's going to be a really big opportunity. So if you can, please come. And Emily, I just want to say thank you for coming onto the podcast. I just want to ask you one more question, and that's, you're a senior, you're graduating. Is there anything you would like to, any wisdom you'd like to bestow upon underclassmen or people interested in CAMS? It can be about IDP or not.
Oh, that's a good question. I would say, I guess as with any high school experience, take risks, try new things. Even going back to like the EDD internships, there are interns who may have not done like mechanical or manufacturing work before, but also want to like try to get into it. Or like even there's like a EDD media intern, right? Who can like help us make posts and make videos and try new things. So take risks, try new experiences, and I guess that's the best advice I have.
Well, thank you so much, and it's been an honor to have you on the podcast.